It's always a pleasure to stand in front of a group of people like today and tonight to welcome you to an event like this for the library and for the press. The event that we're highlighting tonight brings to fore the celebration of the 90th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and the next 10 years, when we're launching the Decade of Women, will take us to the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the signing of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. And I know that for all of us in this room, it seems rather remarkable to think that in the lifetime of some people, there are people still around and with us, who could remember when women did not have the right to vote. It seems rather incredible and fantastic that women would not have had the vote until 1921. I actually, in preparation for today's talk, I went into the debris. And for those of you who are not tried and true Purdue Boilermakers, the debris is the yearbook that was published every year from the 1880s through the most recent, about 2 or 3 years ago. And I went into the 1920 and 1921 debris using our e-archives, digitized versions, looking and hoping to find some reference in those volumes to the passage of the 19th Amendment. Unfortunately, no. They were very interested in literary societies in those days, and they were also extremely committed to the building of the Purdue Memorial Union in reference to the veterans of World War I. But there was no mention of the 19th Amendment being passed. I'm sure it had an impact, and I looked at all the pictures of these young ladies who were participating in various sports and activities, knowing that they were going to be among the first who could vote. But I also want to speak about Susan's philanthropy. I mean, what she's speaking about today is the ability for women to use their influence, their expertise in various projects that are being undertaken and in our world and culture in general. But Susan has been extremely generous with her time, with her commitment, and with her resources in the libraries and on the campus. In the library specifically by endowing our women's archives, the Susan Bulkeley Butler archives, and we're very appreciative of that. But women have played a significant role in being generous and being benefactors to Purdue University for a long period of time. The Eliza Fowler Hall that we oftentimes spend evenings or afternoons listening and watching performances was given by a benefactress at the turn of the century when she donated $70,000 to build the Eliza Fowler Auditorium, which preceded the Eliza Fowler Auditorium. Hall. We're very pleased that we are being able to recognize and honor Susan in this event and thank her and appreciate and show our appreciation for the countless hours and resources that she has given to us. And I don't want to take any more away. I kidded Charles by the fact that I saw him a little bit earlier this afternoon and said I was trying to cut my presentation down to 45 minutes. And he looked at me and he wasn't quite sure I was kidding because I do have a tendency to talk. I guess it's the privilege of a librarian that once you give him the floor, he takes it. So I'll turn it back over. And who am I turning to, Charles? Right here. Oh, I'm turning it over to you. Okay, great.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
We're going to begin tonight with a discussion of the book, and the wonderful panel have all read the book, so we're going to get to them, get their reaction, back and forth, and then we're going to open it up to you all. The microphone's in front, but there are also note cards and pens on your seats if you'd rather write a note to Susan for her to email you an answer, or if you want to pass it forward, I can read the question for you. Susan, you said they may appear on your Facebook page as well.
They might.
We're going to get wacky with that.
Love that.
So first of all, we started talking about doing this interview for the radio, and it grew into this event back in February, I think it was. And I wasn't quite sure what the book was about. I hadn't read it yet, but you assured me that it would be most interesting and most topical. So it's about breaking down the last barriers to women in society and business, launching this decade of change. Why write the book now? Why is it that we need to launch this decade?
Well, I can say that when I started writing my book, I didn't have this decade of change. I mean, quite frankly, my friend had to say, well, we were going to launch it in September, and she said, Susan, why don't you launch it on August 26th? It's the 90th anniversary of the right to vote. Well, that sounded like a good idea to me, so we moved it up and we made the deadlines and all of that. And now it's become the handbook for women and men, you'll hear more about that later, to make a change. We're at the 90% point right now. Think about a marathon. The last 10% are the hardest, right, on a marathon? Well, we're kind of a marathon in this last decade for women to bring us about equality in sight so that we can, in fact, honor what Susan B. Anthony and all the suffragettes really expected to happen when the right to vote was brought about and the Constitution was changed. So that's where we are right now. So in 10 years, I want you all to know you're invited to the 100th anniversary of the right to vote. And I'm going to open your eyes a little bit tonight about what you're going to hear about 10 years from today that we achieved.
How can we achieve this 10-year goal? What do you lay out in this book that is doable?
Well, everything in my book's doable, or I wouldn't have it there, right? Well, that's not really true. But the next 10 years, I'm saying, one, the women need to understand what it is they want to achieve in their life. That's, the first book, Become the CEO of You, Inc., and it's important for all of us, not just for women, to sit down and answer the question, what is it that you want to say you've achieved in the next 3 to 5 years? Or what is it that you want to say you've achieved 10 years from tonight? And if you could sit down and send me an email and document that, I mean, you're great. I hope you have to go home and think about it and then send me an email dated 3 or 5 or 10 years from now and say, Susan, do you know what I just did over the last few years? What happened to me? That's what I want women to do, is to take up responsibility for themselves, to make things happen for them rather than let things happen to them. Then what we need to do, and I think, well, on one hand it could be hard, on one hand I think it could be very easy. But we need to bond together as women to make change happen for other women. We need to work together not only to have our own mentors and have women as mentors for us, but also to mentor the women below us that are coming up. And it's up to us to fill the pipeline. And I hate to say it, but we don't do a very good job at that. And I've had conversation after conversation, and I've been told myself, Susan, you are your own worst enemy. Women, we are our own worst enemy. And we've got to change that. If we want equality in sight for everyone, we've got to change our role in making that happen. And then ultimately, men, we're going to talk about the things you're going to have to help us do, because when we're 18%, only 18% of the senior leadership roles in organizations, there's somebody in that other 82% that don't look like us. So you have to help us bring our numbers up so that we've got the best and the brightest in the leadership ranks of our organizations. So that's what I hope to see, and we'll celebrate in 10 years.
All right. Now, in the book, you lay out some cases of women who have made great achievements back to 500 AD. I'm going to admit that I knew of none of them. And that's part of your point, is
right.
that these have been erased or relegated to footnotes.
Right.
why is it now that we can say, you know, a great achievement by a woman is going to be in the history book?
Well, I mean, I think if anybody looks around, I think that Hillary Rodham Clinton certainly deserves the history books. But there's a woman by the name of Catherine Green. What was the date? I had to look up the date to make sure. 1807. She was on a farm in Georgia, and she decided that there needed to be a machine that could help the people picking cotton to get the seeds out of the cotton. And she created, maybe it's not surprising, but was surprising to me, she created the concept of the cotton gin. And guess who got his name on it? And there's nothing, I did see a book today that I had on it. She was mentioned in that, but she is definitely in the footnotes. And I had somebody who's a kind of a detailed person, and he said, Susan, are you sure about that? You know, you better be sure because somebody's going to call you on it if it's not. But it is true that she gave him the idea, and he ran with it. It was at a time when women wouldn't have their name on an invention like that. So those are the kinds of things. There were others. The Deborah Simpson, who was the first actually woman in the Army, and this was in, I looked this up too, 1790, if you can believe that, impersonated a man. She bound her boobs and went in, and she was the first woman in the Army in 1790. So those are some of the little things that you read about in my book that might be of interest.
So how can we get this equality now? You said it's, you know, we're at the 90%,
right.
The next 10% is the hardest. What can women do? What can men do?
Right. Well, one of the things is I'm just thoroughly enjoying conversations like this. And it's interesting to me, I mean, just like I was, that the 90th anniversary is here. I mean, who would have I mean, I wouldn't have known it other than when somebody told me, I hate to say. But there is a big deal made about it tomorrow and leading up to tomorrow and even what we're doing. So I think that's all goodness. But what are we all going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is have conversations like this and get you to start other conversations about, well, what are you going to do to change history? What are you going to do to make things different than they are today? And I like to say, because this is what I'm doing, I like to say, what's bugging you, Susan? And a friend of mine said, you know, and go about making it happen, fix it. And one of the things that's bugging me, and the poor Wall Street Journal is going to just get really upset at me, but I don't care. They have this ad that they're running. There's a conference that they're holding in September on, I don't know, economic development or something very financial. And one picture that they show will have 6 white guys in it. Another picture that they show will have 10 people in it with 1 woman. Now, to me, in this day and age, in the situation that we're in, that is not acceptable. And I'm going to write to the companies that are sponsoring that ad, that conference. I mean, one is KPMG. I mean, how could KPMG, well, they can do it because they did it, but, you know, I would like them to recognize that there are women that ought to be on that panel and to make a difference. So I count women. I just was talking about old masters, right? And counting the women on the old masters. Because last year there were fewer women than men. And I understand the reasoning, but I count women like that. And I'm glad to have the men here tonight, so thank you. But that's one thing that I want to have you all change. Look at your own committees. I was talking to a woman the other day. She says, I have this committee. You know what? I only have 1 woman on it. I said, what, Kim? You only have 1 woman on that committee? So look at your own committees. Look at your own leadership teams that you're on to see if you've got a mixture of men and women to bring the different skills together to get the better solutions. So that's one thing. Look at what bugs you. go out and make those changes happen. Start mentoring people below you and bring them up, and start getting people above you to mentor you. And if you're up here, then you start bringing other people up. Those are things that you can start doing tomorrow. And I'm sure there's others as we think about it today. So,
I want to say there's a line in the book, if there were more Lehman sisters, Lehman brothers wouldn't have caused such a financial
right.
problem.
If there had been more Lehman sisters to work with Lehman brothers,
Yes.
we wouldn't be in the financial situation that we're in today.
What are some of the successes? What are some things that you've seen already where women are making a difference, women and men are changing the world?
Well, I'll point out my friend Erin right here in the front row. Erin, right. Erin Slater, are you here? Oh, there she is in the back row. Sorry, I saw her back there. I'm sorry. Erin has started, and she's in my book, the College Mentors for Kids. Started by two women at IU, by the way, but Erin's the CEO. And it is exciting to me because it's bringing kids from grades 1 through 9, or 1 through 8, inner city kids, onto college campuses like Purdue, hooking them up with mentors, and they meet with them, I think it's 2 hours a week, both semesters. And it's getting these kids excited about going to college, many of whom would never have been on a college campus. And I think that something like that is really making a difference. I said, well, what happens? And she said, well, the kids go home and start talking about college. The siblings want to get into the program when their time comes up. And the parents and the mother, I mean, particularly the mother, she's got examples that are reading all this literature and want to go back to school and get their college degrees. I mean, what better program is there to change the world than that program of Campus Mentors for Kids? I mean, I love it.
And it's seemingly simple in its design. It's not.
Is it simple?
not to belittle what you're doing, but the
Erin
concept.
can talk more about it later, but even was recognized by Martha Stewart.
Yes.
So she's doing a great job. And our member of the chapter up here on the panel.
Well, we gave them all a book to read in advance, and part of the reason for inviting them is that Susan wanted to hear their reaction and really get a dialogue with them. So we're going to start, why don't we start with Bonnie at the end. What was your reaction to the book? What are you taking away from it after reading it?
I found your book to be very inspiring. It was very helpful and encouraging to read about your story, how you came to Purdue and your life before your Purdue years, and then how you went on to be very successful in your business ventures. And I also found it encouraging to read about other women like Catherine Green, who had done things maybe they didn't get credit for, but that wasn't what they were concerned about. They were most interested, I think, in making a change that would affect a lot of people and hopefully improve people's lives. And the techniques and the tactics that you explain for how to realistically implement change, involving other people, having a sisterhood sort of in the workforce is very helpful in finding ways to create a team that would help you to achieve what you want to do is very good. And also to just take a broader picture of life as more than just work. And some people have a different definition of success. So for some it might be becoming a CEO, but for other people it might be opening their own business. It might be, in other cases, raising a family. But having a respect for those differing roles is, I think, something that I appreciated that you highlighted. So thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm next. Oh, well, first I want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. And in terms of what I got from the book, it was informational and educational. Keeping in mind that I'm an African woman. I mean, really, I've lived in the U.S. for, 13 years, but really I'm an African woman. I was born and bred in Nigeria, and I got the invitation to be on this panel when I was in Nigeria this past summer, first time in 13 years. And so reading a book like that, I'm sitting down saying, wow, you mean American women went through this? So for me, it was really a surprise, to see what women have had to go through and to see where they are in terms of the achievement and the advancement that has been made. But beyond that, to see how much work still needs to be done. I mean, there's something to be said for women receiving, 80 cents on a dollar for every pay men get. There's something to be said about that. So I appreciate the practicality of the steps you gave. These are not big things that can't be done. They are things that you could actually make effort, small steps at a time, to do them. And I appreciate the tips on how do you mentor people? How do you surround yourself with the right kind of mentor? When I was reading the book, and you emphasized a lot the need for mentors. And when I was reading the book, an African saying came into my mind that, you can force a horse to the river, you can't force it to drink water. So I'm saying to myself, if I'm going to mentor someone, and they don't want to be mentored, what am I going to do? So that's going to be my question to you later, but that's besides the point. So I really did enjoy reading the book. I appreciate the practicality of the steps you gave.
Thank you.
And I want to echo as well how much I really enjoyed reading the book and how simple it really is when you look at the plan, how much it really can make an impact for these simple steps. That you have done a great job in making it more of a step-by-step procedure and how you can accomplish change. And I think that's what's overwhelming for some females is they think it's such a big change that they have to make and they're not going to make an impact unless it's something huge. But even the little things, once they start adding up and you put your plan in place on paper,
Right.
is very important, and you can move mountains that way. I really
right.
appreciated
Yeah.
it from
Yeah.
that perspective. It was very easy to understand, and I really enjoyed the examples, the names, making sure that you highlighted those footnotes. I thought that was phenomenal.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I definitely enjoyed reading the book as well. I enjoyed the case studies. Some of the points that you highlighted I thought were very interesting. Before reading the book, I actually talked to several of my female colleagues across different industries to see what they thought the state of the women is,
Oh, good.
in
Good, great.
in business. And it was surprising to me that a lot of them, they didn't have a lot of senior management females in their companies. And the point that you brought up, the percentage of women in executive positions were 19% in 2000 versus 32% in 1990, I thought really hit home, what's really the state of today. So I really enjoyed that piece there.
Great. Great.
Well, I actually read your book coming off of a course I'd taken at Purdue on women in leadership. So when I first read it, all these issues were just top of mind. And it was so great to hear a Purdue alumna speaking to these issues. And that really brought it home to me as in, this is something that, now that I'm here and I'm graduating, and this is something that I can really do too. I can follow your example, and these are changes I can make. But then I read it again a couple weeks ago, once I knew I was going to be on this panel, and it was amazing to me how much my awareness had slipped and how much these things, when they're not in front of you every day, when you're not in a workplace that's maybe difficult for women. I work with all women who are very supportive of me, but who knows, that might not be the case for the rest of my career. So I think it's very important, as the other panelists have said, to highlight the challenges and make sure that women are constantly aware of them, identifying, like you said, what's bugging me, identifying those problems and finding ways to solve them.
Great.
My general reaction to the book was, I thought it was very relatable, which, okay, what do I really have in common with, the CEO of her own self-made institute? I'm still at school, but I was reading the book just from the beginning, and it was like, okay, I grew up in a small town. I'm going to Purdue. I'm going to graduate from Craner. And as I started reading it and realizing, I was like, this is the exact path I want to go in my life. And so not only was it relatable, but then after reading it and hearing your story and everything, I was like, wow, this is realistic. And it's not just the goals and dreams I have, but I've seen and read about someone who it's come true to them, and you put it into real life. And I just thought it was really neat and realistic and very eye-opening to me as a younger woman.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Is there anything that, reading the book or having thought about it, that there's something you can do to change the world, to make it better for women? We'll start down here with you, Leah.
After reading it, I think one of the most important things that's highlighted in the book and what you kind of touched on earlier was the role women have to play to network with each other and to bring each other up. I think women have an amazing ability to empathize and to be with each other and to really understand and listen to others more so than men. Sorry, I don't know. I think that's something that women are very good at doing. And just coming to events like this, finding a mentor, I think, within your organization with someone who you look up to is just something so important. And I know you talk about that a lot in the book. And I think that that's something so important. And just to move forward with in our own personal lives and careers, I think that that's really, really important.
I would build on that, on just identifying the importance of working together with other women. As I'm getting ready to move to Chicago this weekend to start a new job, and here locally I've been involved in the Association for Women in Communications, and they don't have a Chicago chapter. And so now the national organization is asked, would you be willing to start that? And recognizing how important it is for women to have this group. It was founded 100 years ago when women couldn't join the men's professional societies, and really keeping that legacy alive and continuing to offer those opportunities for women is something that I feel I could really be involved in, and this book is definitely a good roadmap for making that a reality.
Great.
Well, personally, I'm at a point in my career where I think I need to start becoming more of a mentor at this point. I've started with developing a women's network at my current organization. So I think I need to take a more structured approach to mentoring some of the younger women in that organization at this point.
And I think to go off of that part, for the students that I currently do mentor, I think it's very important that I share this plan with them and have follow-up conversations with them and see, once they put their plan on paper, how can I help them make some more connections or, increase their network. And then, as you already mentioned, with my role as the advisor for the Old Masters program, is putting a plan in place. Because we talk about it a lot, and we know that the pool of female nominees is very small, but what are we going to do to fix that? And I think I'm at that step to actually make that happen.
Oh yeah, and for me, it's a bit different. It's a bit different in terms of what I take away from the book, looking at my career, because even though the book is geared towards those in business and I'm in academics, assistant professor, there are a lot of points there, and I found very fascinating. For example, on page 116, you talked about the fact that, if you're the only woman in an organization, it can get pretty lonely. Oh yeah, I've been there. I know what that feels like, especially when you're wearing two caps. You're wearing the cap of being a woman and being black. So, it's a double whammy many a times. And I appreciate the point you brought out on page 121, the fact that, even with those kind of situations, you can and you should find a way to find your voice. I think for me, that is one point that I'm taking from the book. The fact that despite the caps that I might have to wear, which I do wear, and many a times might not wear it well, the bottom line is I don't want to let my voice get lost. And that's a point that I deeply appreciate, which of course brings me to a question which I intend to ask you later.
Get ready.
I want to echo something that Leah mentioned a little bit ago, just about how women have a unique role in, I guess, understanding and maybe perceiving different needs. As a nursing student here at Purdue and as a former English student too, I've noticed that oftentimes, maybe you have felt this way too. If you're in a group meeting, I tend to sort of sit back. I want to take in what's going on, what's being said, and if there's a need that has not been voiced or if there's a perspective that's been overlooked, then you have a choice as an individual. Am I going to be bold enough to speak up and say something, or am I going to let it slide because that would not make any waves? And something I'm learning as a nursing student is that when it involves caring for another person, you better make a wave, because you want to make sure that that person, if they're in the operating room or if they're being given the wrong medication and there's a mistake that's about to be made, you are the only person who can go ahead and intervene to try and protect that individual's welfare in that setting. But that idea, that mentality really applies, I think, to women in just about every situation, because we have that choice that we can make on a daily basis in any number of scenarios. Are we going to discuss maybe how our company might be able to create a plan that would be more family friendly, that would allow for more, I don't know, more flexible vacation days or something like that, so families have the time that they need, especially if a family member is ill. Just any number of scenarios that women can be very sensitive to, just as men can, but perhaps we perceive it in a different way. We can think of different solutions to those problems. And I just think that, I really appreciated your challenge to be vocal and to not be afraid to just step out there and do what needs to be done, and to, say what needs to be said, but also to then try to enact change, and really also to learn from failure, those times when you didn't speak out, what happened, So you have to be willing to kind of look back at maybe the mistakes that you've made, not purposefully perhaps, but then to be very purposeful about everything that you do moving forward, and mentoring other people and being mentored, not being afraid to ask for advice from other people who've been where you are. Gee, what do you think I could have done or should have done in this situation? Those are really important things, and I just thank you so much for putting it in writing, because that's what we needed.
Great, thank you. So let's hear about the questions.
Yeah.
We're going to open this up to others, and I guess we're going to use the microphone.
We're going to use the microphone, or if anyone's written down a question, Charles can collect that as well. But yeah, if we want to start,
Well,
I think there might be a question.
While you're thinking, we'll start with them.
Well, no, actually, my question is in line with the point made about making sure you don't get your voice lost. Like she was talking about not making waves. How do we as women across the board, how do we find our voice, said what needs to be said, without it seeming, making it seem as if we're pulling the sexism card? Because it's very easy for us to get a little bit of, oh, she's just been celibate. Oh, it's the PMS. It's that time of the month.
Right.
How do we say what needs to be said without being labeled as pulling the card, as playing the sexist card?
Well, first of all, my feeling is that it's worse when you're the only one in the room versus when there's 3 or 4 of you around the table. And that is precisely why we need to have more than 1 or more than 2 around the table, so that everybody feels like they can have their voice heard. It's interesting because this whole point came because I got reprimanded and learning from experience. But I would sit in a meeting, and this was in a consulting environment. I was sitting in the meetings and I wouldn't say a word. And in my annual review, I was written up. Lou Wheeler, I can see him telling me about it today. Susan, the client wonders why you're sitting in the meeting because you don't talk. Well, my point back to him was, well, with you and Kent talking all the time, I don't need to get how can I get a word in edgewise? But when everything's being said, why do I have to talk just to say what my 2 cents worth is? So you have to learn how to be yourself, to be courageous in these meetings, and to speak out. And it's important. But then there's the situation where you do say something, and they say, kind of pass over, and they're going around the table, and everybody else is talking, and my friend Doug sitting over there says the same thing I just said. And I said to myself, now, didn't I just say that? And then I start thinking, well, yeah, I did, but did I say too many words? Did I not make my point? But everybody said, oh, sure, Doug, we need to go that way. And I thought it was just me until I heard somebody on a panel like this say, who was a senior woman at IBM, and I thought, well, if she can say this, I can say it. But she had the same thing, and she said, what I really want to do is to say, gee, Doug, I'm glad you liked my idea. Now, when are we going to move on it? But it is a frustrating thing, but we've got to just have the courage to get out there and to be represented. Otherwise, why are we there? We've got to make a difference. My point is we need to make a difference no matter who we are, but where we are. Every time we invest our time, we need to make a difference for being there. It's up to us. What else?
Sure.
In the book, you had talked about how do you achieve success, and you had an outline. The first step was to develop a plan. The next step was to build a team, and then to set assignments and interim goals. How did you go about building your team throughout your career? How did you identify key individuals?
Well, it's interesting, and I've done it, even on this book project. I mean, I'm doing it even today. You set the end in mind, you begin the end in mind, just like I said, describe your end in mind so you know where you're going, because you do that on any project anyway, right? You figure out what the project report's going to look like and how you're going to fill in all the content, and then you're back here making assignments to people that are on your team to do this and do this and do this, and then you're going to get together and make the report. I mean, it's no different than what we all do wherever we are, whether you're at the school board meeting or whether you're in business or government. You do that, but we don't do it for ourselves. And so I can remember when the partner said, or one of the partners, of course there weren't any women partners at Arthur Andersen or Andersen Consulting, because I was the first. So I can remember precisely when one of the partners, my key friend in Detroit, said, Susan, you can be a partner and I'm going to help you be there, which he did. But then I had to step back and say, well, okay, what kind of roles and responsibilities do I have to get? What do who do I have to meet? Blah, blah, blah. All these things that you have to do to make that happen. But if we don't have that intention, then we don't make the plan, then we don't work the plan to make sure we can get there. So we're sitting back here letting things happen to us rather than making things happen for us. So I think, and that's what we're going to do for the next decade. We're going to set the end in mind, and I've talked about it, and every day. Somebody the other day said, well, Susan, how are we going to address the K through 12 needs to get these young women engaged so they know that to dream big, and they know they can do anything they set their minds to do, and to get them role models and mentors and that kind of thing, just like the guys have. I mean, we'll get to Mike in a minute, but men help men, our sons particularly, in what needs to happen, what they need to do, who they need to meet with, and all of that. But are they doing the same for women? And I hope they are. I think a lot of them are today. But I think we need to do more to get women to be all they can be, and to get them prepared for the future, and to be all they can be wherever they are.
My question kind of goes off of what you were just saying about the younger girls. When I was asked to read the book, I was really excited because I never really thought to read a book like this, because I was just never really crossed my mind being younger, I guess. And so, and I found it incredibly helpful, and I think all young women should read it, and the younger, and so what you were saying with the K through 12, would you ever consider writing a book geared towards younger women? And if so, what advice would you focus on or give?
Charles and I have already talked about that, and we have some things in mind. I mean, both books, I think would be very beneficial to the younger generations. And I think that people need to understand, where we've come from, what's happened, because it hasn't. I mean, it took 70 years to get the Constitution changed. 70 years. And they had to move from, the government wouldn't do it, so they had to get every one of the states to approve it. And there was the big deal was on the 18th of August when Tennessee and others celebrated, because a young legislator, 24-year-old Henry Byrne, was the last one to vote in Tennessee. They were the last state to either say yay or nay. And before he voted, he got some kind of a message from his mother and said, Harry, listen to your mother. I'm kind of adding to it, ad-libbing here. But the idea was she, in fact, changed his nay to yay, to yes. And in that split second, he made history. I mean, so talk about, changing history in a split second. I mean, you can by doing some little something. I mean, that wasn't little, but it was a yes or a no, and he checked the yes box, thank goodness. So I think I take your point. Thank you for nudging me. I'm the nudger usually. So thank you for nudging me, because I need to do something about the K through 12 group. What other questions are out there? Yes.
Sure. Could you come up to the microphone, please? Sorry.
This is being taped, so.
We're recording.
How do you go about picking the mentor? I kind of know how to do that, but do these girls this age know how to pick their mentor? What are some of the criteria? I think one of the first criteria would be you get along.
Right.
I know Bonnie's my friend, and she has one nursing instructor that she really relates to. If that person will be a mentor is yet to be known. I'm not even sure she's gone there with that thought, but it's a thought. So what are some criteria for picking a mentor?
Well, it's interesting because, they're not people for life, and maybe there's just somebody that you need to go get some advice from and have a cup of coffee with them. I mean, but you do want to be, have a good trusting relationship with them. I mean, sometimes you want to go and talk about some personal things. Well, this just happened to me today. And women have a need to have somebody that they can go blow off steam with. And men do it automatically. I mean, they just do it. They go out and have a beer and just and talk about, what just happened to me, and they get it out, and tomorrow morning they've forgotten all about yesterday, all about it. Today, something will happen, and I'll stew and I'll fret over it and worry about it. And finally today, something just happened related to my publicist, and I finally just had to talk to one of them in New York and say, I just got to let off some steam because I'm mad. Because if I don't, it's just going to get in here and be a mountain out of a molehill, very short. So we got to get over that. And whoever it is, whatever it takes, get over it. I mean, talk to somebody about it and get over it. But I've had this one woman who, she and I have been a mentor. She's been on my team since way before my first book. But she's an author, and so she's been advising me all along and giving me good advice and counsel about being an author. And she was the one that came up with August 26th and the Decade for Women. So, you've just got friends around. They are friends. Some of them are your peers. Some are people outside. Some are people at home. It's just people that can help you, people that can open doors for you. Because once you've thought about where your aspiration is, you need to start talking to people about, gee, this is what I want to do. Now, can you open a door for me to introduce me to so-and-so so I can talk to them about where it is I want to be? So these are people that you really can confide in, but also have an opportunity to just sit down and kind of shoot the breeze with sometimes, too. Yes?
Could you come on up, please?
Historically, major advancements in women's equality have been either spurred by or associated with the feminist movement. So I'm curious what your perspective is on where the movement is today and how maybe your book relates to feminism.
Right. Thank you for that. Let me just give you a little bit of a historical journey. In the early 1900s, the women, were obviously doing their duty in the homes, taking care of the children. There became a need then that we needed the women to go out into the farmland and to help produce the products, help with the farming, and we did that. And then World War I came, and lo and behold, the men went off to war, and we just said, well, okay. They said, well, come on in. You need to start running the factories now, and you need to start running the companies now, and they didn't say, well, have you graduated from college, or, you know, what's your degree in, or anything like that. I mean, we just didn't give us any tests. You know, we just went out and did whatever we needed to do the job, and I think we did it pretty well. But then the men came back and wanted their jobs, and I got this phrase from one of the women in a conversation. As a dutiful wife, we gave up the jobs so that the men could have the jobs, and we went back into the home. So in World War II, same thing happened, right? The men went off to war, and this is where Rosie the Riveter was there, and people were campaigning and really going out trying to find women to come in and run the plants, because and in my little company, or my little town of Abingdon, Illinois, we had a company there, and they converted to to developing products for the war. And I was talking to a woman the other day who was 19 years old. And she went into the plant. She was working for my family in the plant, doing on the assembly line, dealing with these products that were going into the bombs, and she didn't have any education, but she was doing her job. She said, all I had to do is I was too short, so I had to stand up on a block of something or other. But so we did the job, and the men came back, and well, lo and behold, we weren't so anxious to give up our jobs then, because we liked the check. We liked being out and about and working. So that's when the Gloria Steinem era came up, and that was, in the mid-'60s, I mean, that's when I was here. And that's when The Feminine Mystique was written. But I say, I have to admit that I said, I'm not one of those feminists. I mean, because I was raised that said I could do anything I set my mind to do, and my sister was already out there doing that. So I'm not one of those bra-burning people. I mean, and I didn't like it at all. But in doing the history that I've done in my book, I found, thank goodness for Gloria Steinem and that part of our history. Because if that hadn't happened then, we would not be where we are today. So I'm about to be in a group with Gloria Steinem, and I'm going to have to tell her my story and say, do my mea culpa and say, I apologize for my thinking. It was very important. And it's very important now at this juncture, because we're there, we've got a lot of the information, the timing is right, because we're the biggest consumer population there is. We've got well over 50% of the graduating classes in college these days. I saw a statement the other day that said we're 60% of the National Honor Society now. I hate to say you're not getting the best and the brightest, maybe, by hiring all men. Maybe there's some talent out there that you might want to think about. And we're about 50% of the workforce population now, and it's growing. So, the timing is right, and it is as somebody told me, it's just the right thing to do. And we've got demonstrated value delivered to the bottom line to decision making when you've got the voices of two different groups of people around the table. So to me, I mean, I'm just a little girl from Abingdon, Illinois, and farmland and 3,500 people, but to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I wouldn't be up here the way I am today talking about this and the importance of how it is that we're all going to change this world. I mean, I spend 3 days a month here trying to change the world for academia, and I'm having a great time doing it. And we take a few steps every month or more. And I'm here at the Cranard School helping take a few steps there every month. So it's just important for all of us to say, it's not quite right the way it is today, at least for some of us to think that way. I hope you will all get on board and realize that there's a better world out there for everybody. if we bringing equality for women and men as partners around the table in conversation to bring about more layman sisters to work with layman brothers as a team. Because if we change organizations and change companies and businesses and change academia, you know, we're changing the world, and the world needs that change. So, it was a little pontification there, but you can tell I have a little passion for what I'm talking about.
I think we're running up against our time limit.
Oh, we are.
And Susan will be available to talk after this. But aside from the launch of your book, Purdue Press is the publisher. This is in conjunction with their 50th anniversary. If you want to talk about your relationship with them and experience over the past year or two.
Well, I can't say enough about the Purdue Press. And I've just gotten, I knew about WBAA, but I really didn't know a lot about WBAA. So I'm getting to know more about WBAA. But I can't say enough about Purdue Press. My first book was published by a friend of mine, more like in a self-publishing way, but he had a publishing company. That company went under, and so Purdue Press was kind enough to take over my book, become the CEO of You Inc., and I'm forever grateful for that. And then I'm such a Purdue person that I really didn't have any choice. I mean, I didn't even want to go out and, you know, get some royalty. Doug asked me today what kind of royalty I got, and I said, you know, what's a royalty? So anyway, you know, I went to Charles and others and said, you know, well, here's my idea. Would you do it? And it's not quite like the most academic books that they publish. It's a little different. So they were out. They sent it out to a woman who has a background in women's. What do I want to say? Women's studies. Thank you. Women's studies. She's at Stanford. I thought, wow, got this Stanford professor giving her viewpoint on my book, and she raved about it. I thought, wow, I'm impressed. So she said, sure, you ought to do this, Charles. So they were wonderful, and it's just been a joy to work for them. I think they've enjoyed working with me. I hope they've enjoyed working with me and some of my crazy ideas. But it's really been a joy, and I hope that you all really enjoy the books as much as I do and as much as you hear them about it. There's a hand trying to go up. Yes, quickly. Sorry.
One of the great disappointments that I've had was to see the Equal Rights Amendment go down to defeat in this country. And I think Indiana happened to be the last state that passed the Equal Rights Amendment, but it didn't pass by the sufficient number of states.
That's true.
And I think that's a pity, and I'm not sure the younger women are as concerned about that as they ought to be.
Right.
So that's my political statement. What's your reaction?
Well, thank you for that, and I have to add that to progress for the 100th anniversary, and put that on the list to say, okay, now where do we want to be in 10 years regarding the Equal Rights Amendment? So thank you very much for that. I'm glad you did this. So anyway, thanks to everybody. I'm going to be around. All I want to do is, this is not a free lunch, guys and gals. I mean, I'm glad you're here, but it's not a free lunch. Anything I do, you've invested time. Anything I do, I hope that I have spurred you on to do something differently when you walk out this door tonight than you would have done coming in here today. What is it that you're going to do, wherever you are, to change history, to change the world, to change the world for women, however you define it? But 10 years from today, when you're here, what will you say you've done? Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And also, thanks to our panelists for being part of this thing. Very interesting.